Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Doctor Who review today on this channel, where today we're talking about survivors of the Flux. But before we do that, as we always do, we start with a little weird introduction type thing. As you're probably already aware, I talk about it every single week. I have a little initial reaction type review today, and then every single Wednesday on my Spotify podcast, Spill Your Beans, we do a full 40-50 minute review in depth, looking at the episode, talking about theories, all that sort of stuff. So if you want to check out the first 4 weeks, including last week's obviously Village of the Angels, fantastic cliffhanger that we had there, as well as my final proper thoughts on that episode, you can check that out on the podcast, linked below. And if you want to support the channel and get a few benefits out of it, you can head to the Patreon page linked below, where you can see all the episodes early access before they come out on Spotify. That is the podcast, of course, and also potentially claim some digital art and stuff as well, which is quite exciting in itself. So there's a few little things on there, a few little benefits, but if you fancy supporting the channel, I'd really appreciate it for the minimum of £1 a month. Really not that much, so if you can spare it and you fancy joining on and supporting the channel and myself as a content creator, and of course the content that I make, please head over there, again, linked in the description below. Anyway, let's talk about Survivors of the Flux. Okay, so let's discuss Survivors of the Flux. What do I even say? There's so much going on in this episode. So there's a lot going on. I don't even know where to start, because this is the beginning of the end of Flux, and it's bringing everything together. Chris Chibnall's really putting all his cards on the table with this one, and I absolutely love it, I have to say. I was a big fan of this. I love an episode where I can genuinely react to stuff and get excited by stuff, and this was exactly that. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it in the long run, but it was an episode that really made me jump out of my chair on various different moments. There's a lot there, and I really don't know how to break it down, because there's a lot of stuff to talk about there, but yeah, let's try, I guess. So there's multiple parts of the story. You've got the Doctor's stuff, you've got Yaz and Dan and Jericho stuck in the past, and then you've also got whatever's going on with Swarm and Azor, and then the Lupari, and the Sontarans, and Kate Stewart, and Unit, and there's so much. That being said, let's talk about it. I think, should we just go right into characters and then sort of divulge from there, I guess? So first of all, the Doctor, Jodie Whittaker, is on form this episode. She was incredible. I really loved her performance, basically all the way through. It was very much an expositional kind of one, very similar to that of The Timeless Children in that style, but a lot more gravitas this time around. And talking about her story in particular in this episode, some of the best stuff I've seen from Whittaker's era, like the reveal of Tecteun, kind of everyone saw it coming, but it was very well handled. The idea that her history remains still in the Fob Watch, the inclusion of the Ood, the explanation of what the Flux is, where it comes from, who the Division are, and also talking about the Doctor's own origins and past, I think is so fascinating. And, you know, it really drives home for me how effective The Timeless Children was. You could say, obviously argue that this was written well after The Timeless Children was even on screen, but that being said, back at the time, you know, go back a couple of years, a lot of the main arguments were going to be, well, this is they didn't explain it enough, they didn't do enough with it, all that sort of thing, like, it's a big change and they didn't really expand on it. This is the expansion. And I remember people saying at the time, myself included, like, wait till Series 13 comes out, and then we'll judge how much they use the Timeless Children stuff, and see if it's actually something that we can complain about or praise. And this is absolutely a praise moment, because the Division, Timeless Children, Tecteun, all that sort of canon and lore and stuff that's played around with is explored so much in this, and it is absolutely so exciting. I'm really excited for where that's going to go next week. Not just with Swarm and Azor, and obviously Tecteun being bloody murdered in this, but having the Doctor's own history explored as well. When the shot in the next time trailer where the watch is opened and you sort of see down this sort of tunnel, I'm kind of going to see, well, I'm assuming we're going to see some Joe Martin flashbacks. We're going to find out who these incarnations were, who were the Timeless Children, you know, see maybe another couple of fugitive Doctors in there, I'm not really sure, but either way, I'm quite excited for that. So that's that story kind of talked over in like a couple minutes. I love it. I'm a big fan of it, the aesthetic of it, the characters, the dialogue was excellent. The use of Tecteun being able to turn it back on the Doctor by going, well, me picking you up from where you were and changing your life and changing your story is exactly what you do to companions all the time. I mean, it was obviously a bit more poetic than that, and I've just summed it up, but that was a really impactful moment, and I was like, oh, That's right. She's actually right there. Like, Tektian is making a very good point there. Talking about the companions, let's do Dan and Yaz and Jericho's story, of course, all in one, because they basically had the same story. Now, a lot of this is the boring story for me. That being said, I still love it. I love the idea of them being trapped in the past. I love the idea of them doing some Indiana Jones style puzzles and stuff to really kind of work out what's going on. It was a bit all over the place, but like, it worked. It did its job. I think the difficulty with this episode, there's so much going on, and the other stuff is more interesting to me personally, like Unit and the Doctor's own history obviously is way more interesting for me personally, but this was still effective. I wish they'd done it a bit earlier. There's no way they could have done, but I really, really appreciate what they tried to do with this, and it was a huge success. I think they did a really, really good job with that. The characters were really fleshed out. I love seeing the interaction between Yaz and the hologram version of 13. That was really cool. And yeah, no, really, really great stuff with these characters and that story. And then we've got the Grand Serpent stuff. Now, this was a weird one for me. I'm not even going to get into Kate Stewart yet. We'll talk about that in just a moment, because I've got a bit of a bone to pick with that. I really like this. I love the way it sort of started to introduce itself and started to rear its head, sort of showcasing the beginning and the origins of Unit. I mean, what a brilliant idea. Like, for the beginning of this, even bringing back a little hint to the United Nations there, which they haven't legally been allowed to say for years, because of course Unit was originally the United Nations Intelligence Task Force, and now it's United Intelligence, is it? Unified Intelligence Task Force, that's right. But it was originally United Nations, and it's interesting that they mentioned that, name dropped that. It was great seeing a classic Unit headquarters. We heard the Brigadier on the overhead speaker at one point, which was really cool. We had a couple of references. I'm not too brushed up on my classic Who Unit stuff, so I may have missed a couple here and there, but it was very exciting. It was cool to see them have hold of the TARDIS. That's an interesting point that hasn't really been divulged any further. And it was really great to see the interactions between not just the Grand Serpent and the Unit guy, the Unit General from the 60s and 50s, because he was brilliant. He's in Cold Feet. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a fantastic actor, and he was a great presence, a proper great Unit General. But then also seeing the classic uniforms. Oh my god, I was loving the classic Unit uniforms. Really, you know, fanboy, nerdy kind of stuff there. I really loved that. But then, of course, Kate Stewart. Now, here's my thing with Kate Stewart. It was a fantastic inclusion in this episode, a really, really good job. However, why? Oh my god, why was she in the Next Time trailer last week? I said this on Twitter, I said, I really hope it's not another John Sim thing where, like, she rocks up in the last 10 minutes and they show her in the Next Time trailer just to get a few extra viewers and get people talking. It's like, and that's exactly what happened. This episode had a lot of big stuff in it, but everyone was expecting, like another character to rock up or something kind of big and like hard-hitting, which is, you know, fair enough, considering they announced Kate Stewart in the Next Time trailer, which is a really weird thing for this era to do, considering how secretive they usually are. But I think it's very telling why they did that. I don't know why they did that, but it's very telling, and it says a lot, and it worries me a little bit that they feel the need to include such a big thing in the Next Time trailer when she only appeared in the last, like, 10-15 minutes. She was great. I love seeing Kate Stewart, and Gemma Redgrave is brilliant in the role, and it's always a delight to see her back. Great to have the name drop of Osgood, and also a great little inclusion that I'd love to mention here is they finally confirmed why Unit was disbanded. All those jokes about Brexit, all those like comments and stuff, and I'm sure people said at the time, I can't put myself in that because I don't know what I said at the time, I really can't remember, but I'm sure people at the time, people were saying, like, just wait it out, I'm sure there's a reason they name dropped Unit in here, I'm sure there's a reason as to why they did that. Series 12 didn't give us a reason, which was a bit confusing, but finally, it's not Brexit. It was planned, or maybe not planned, but at least well delivered and understood. And you know, there's one thing I like about Doctor Who more is when it plants a seed and lets it grow. Series 11 may have not have had that much lore stuff and could have been very different, and looking back in retrospect, could have been tweaked to include a little bit more of that to set up Series 12 and 13. Maybe references to the Master, or the Doctor's own history, or something like that. But the inclusion of the Timeless Child in the Ghost Monument, and of course the mention of Kate Stewart and Unit being disbanded and Kate Stewart being off the books in Resolution, I can't even get the name right, was a great idea to sort of hype that up and bring that forward for a potential storyline in the future, which is now finally being worked. Doctor Who is at its best when it plays on old stuff being brought back and going, you remember that little seed we planted like 2 years ago? Here is why. that's the best kind of thing. Obviously, some people can be quite impatient, myself included, sometimes. But yeah, it wasn't Brexit. Thank God, it wasn't a Brexit joke. It's partially to do with this. Obviously, at the time, it might have been intended to be that. We don't know. We don't know the behind the scenes. But at least we can't have that joke anymore, and we can kind of just shift on and go, oh, right, it was the Grand Serpent. Kate Stewart tried to stop it. She got, like, almost assassinated, and then went off the records, went off book, went into the darkness. And I really, really like that, because it means that she's going to come back badass in the next episode, and I'm very, very excited for that, because it could be the return of Unit in time for the Centenary special, of course, which will be very, very exciting stuff indeed. In terms of other stuff, Swarm and Azor had their own stuff, as did Vinda there. It was fine. I think the problem with this series that I'm having so far is that it sets up some really interesting concepts and then sets up another really interesting concept, and it gets me more interested in one than the other. So Swarm and Azor were excellent in episodes 1 and 2, and 3 actually. But one thing that threw me out, honestly, was like last week we didn't have much of them, and in this week we didn't have much of them. So when they had the whole stuff with Vinda, I was a bit like, I don't really care what's happening with these. I know it's important, but I'm like, I feel like it's been so long without them, I'm more interested in the other stuff that's going on. That being said, the ending of the episode, them coming in, killing Tecteum, which is a power move right there, especially for Doctor Who fans going, wow, okay, just killed off that character. That's, it's pretty big, actually, in terms of the Doctor's own personal history, killing off her, adopted mother after she's just worked out who this person actually is. And then almost killing the Doctor. We know it's not going to go there. We know she's probably going to discover her own personal history. But there's a lot of interesting stuff there. A lot to go off. Bell and Carvanista, that's just a setup next time. And then the Sontarans. Really interesting thing. Looking at the next time trailer, it's going to be the Sontarans, the Cybermen, and the Daleks, all kind of seemingly fighting for the right spot. I mean, it was mentioned in episode 3, I think. Or 4. I can't remember. It was mentioned in episode 3, I think, Bell's story, where she's like, the Cybermen, the Daleks, and the Sontarans are all competing for, like, land, who gets what. So Earth being the centre of it, the last planet standing, almost. And the Sontarans using the Grand Serpent to sort of let them get in. But then there's also the Cybermen and the Daleks appearing in the next time trailer. It's very exciting stuff indeed. And it really does get me excited, because I'm just like, okay, so Cybermen versus Daleks again, but versus Sontarans, who are already one step ahead because they've got the Grand Serpent on their side. You've got Kate Stewart in the middle fighting it all. I was a little bit disappointed, I have to say, with the Sontaran appearing. When the Grand Serpent was talking to someone, I was expecting it to be someone big, Rassilon, or like the Master or something, where it would be like, oh my god, of course, the big mastermind behind the whole thing. That didn't happen. But I'm not against it. I on retrospect, I think the Sontarans, it's appropriate. They are one of the big bads of this series, and it made sense for them to come back in a little bit of a way, and to have them fight against the Cybermen and the Daleks next time will be very, very exciting. This episode did a lot, and a lot of it was set up, as well as revealing a few things along the way. But in terms of let's call this and The Vanquishers a two-parter, the final two-parter of the series even. This is miles better than what Ascension of the Cybermen hyped itself up to be. This manages to get all the plot threads happening at once that aren't boring, and making it work to a decent conclusion where they can all pick up next time. It's not going, oh, look at all this random stuff, because the Timeless Children didn't really need the Cybermen. But it did, because it had to follow on and all that sort of stuff. It's very interesting. This episode introduces a lot of interesting concepts, and I really am excited to see where it's going to go next week. For the first time in a very, very long time, I genuinely am on the edge of my seat, desperate for the next episode for more Doctor Who. Now, I have loved Jodie's era, and it is coming slowly to a close, but it has to be said, I am a huge, huge fan of what they're doing with Flux. I wasn't expecting to be. I was expecting to have putting my expectations down, admittedly, and I am thoroughly, thoroughly impressed so far. I don't think this is a perfect episode. I don't think Flux is a perfect series. But my god, is it the best of the Chibnall era so far. I was really needing these last 2 episodes to absolutely deliver. And if next week manages it, this will be a brilliant series. It will be one of my favourites because of its, how small scale it is, but how large scale it is. The style of storytelling, so unique, so different, incorporating lots of different Doctor Who elements. It really feels like a high budget Doctor Who movie split into 6 parts, and I absolutely adore that, let me tell you. In terms of next week, I am not entirely sure when my review will be coming out. I want to quickly mention this. I may or may not be away from my desk and may not be able to watch the episode until Monday. So, if you keep an eye on my Twitter, at GBSheard, you'll be able to follow that in the description below. I'll be posting a few updates during the week, depending on what the plan ends up being with that. But at the moment, you can expect my review next Monday, the day after the episode, of course, comes out. So obviously stay tuned for that, see what happens with that, and hopefully, you know, it'll get sorted and I'll have a concrete date by the end of next week. So, yeah. If it's not Sunday night, it'll definitely be Monday next week. So stay tuned. Still watch the review, obviously, please. And yeah, so thank you all so much for watching. I think that's all I really want to say about this. For my full in-depth review, you can check out my podcast, as previously mentioned, where I'll be doing a full episode talking about all the theories and breakdowns and all the different stories once I've had time to rewatch the episode. So do check that out, link in the description below. In the meantime, though, that's basically it. Follow all my socials in the description below, as well as the Patreon, Spotify podcast, etc. And yeah, that's pretty much it, I think. Thanks so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know what you thought in the comments below, and I will see you all next time. Have a lovely day. Bye-bye.